Hello YouTube land, it is me, Justin King again with another video. So this time we are going to do another article review. This article is on the website voxs.com and it is entitled Meet the Black Girls of Goth. This was written back in 2017, so this is another older article, but again, anything that talks about the intersection of being black and goth, I love to present to you guys and give my personal exposition and analysis on and make it more visible so other people can check it out as well. So this one was written by nittle, and it says that nittle is a reporter for The Goods by Vox. She has written for a number of news organizations including The Atlantic, Think Progress, Digital First Media, KCET, and Gannett. She's also edited 2 book series for Enslow Publishing and has written a book for the publisher as well. For several years, she was About.com's race relations expert. She has a master's degree in education and taught briefly before pursuing a journalism career. You go, girl. So let's get into the article and see what she has to say. Tagline to the article says, "They say the scene isn't about what you look like, but how you feel." So as I did with the other article, I'm not going to read the entire one. I'm going to put the link in the description and maybe in the pinned section as well so you all can check it out. But I'm going to highlight the beginning, some things in the middle, and a little bit in the end. So the beginning starts out by saying, pale, thin, and white. In some ways, the aesthetic ideal for a goth isn't much different from the aesthetic ideal for a ballerina. While ballet has superstar Misty Copeland bringing attention to the lack of diversity in that field, goth culture doesn't have an African American of similar status as its face. Yet, black goths exist. Yes, we do. They can be found in Facebook groups like Black Goth Girls Rock. They attend the Afro-Punk Music Festival in combat boots and Wednesday Addams dresses. And they're buying the new tops illustrator Bianca, and I apologize, I'm probably going to mispronounce this name wrong and I'm not trying to, but Bianca Zunis designed for indie brand Adorned by Chi. "So goth, I was born black," the shirt declares. It's the unofficial motto of Goths of Color, Zunis explains. "I don't know the originator," she says. "It's something I've seen and heard since the early days of LiveJournal," which I love, and honestly, I was not aware of that when LiveJournal was out, so that's something I personally missed, but it's cool that she has that. And this is, again, highlighting, as I've said time and time again, for those of you who are subscribers or frequent watchers of my channel, goth and being black has skyrocketed since social media. And really, prior to social media, it was something extremely hard to really feel comfortable and getting a sense of inclusion, a sense of visibility, a sense of representation, and a sense of community amongst, that you are actually not the only black goth out there. So social media has been really integral to the boost of more of us being shown in there and more of us feeling comfortable and really sturdy into the goth community, that without it, I don't think as many of us would be out there and brave enough to be ourselves. Zunis isn't the only one. Other African Americans say they became scene kids because of their upbringings, interest in art and music, or fondness for a particular aesthetic. They point out that goth and alternative cultures may be linked to whiteness in the popular imagination, but many of the characteristics associated with these subcultures, especially piercings, tattoos, and rock have roots in communities of color. Goth icon Screamin Jay Hawkins was a black man from Cleveland known for his theatrical rendition of the 1956 hit I Put a Spell on You, which a sultry Nina Simone covered in 1965. Hawkins took his style cues from Dracula and voodoo stereotypes, with a trademark cape, slick hair, and stage props that included coffins, rubber snakes, and skull on a stick. And just like I've mentioned, I have covered and I am going to be covering articles that talk about things that are in goth motifs, clothing, topics in music, stylistic keys of music and rhythms of music, instruments used in music, as well as visibly expressing ourselves that can be traced back to things that are, of course, of the Africa diaspora, and how unfortunately pre-social media that was never addressed, it was never mentioned, and it was something that was looked past and erased. And with the coming of social media, as this article I say, people are coming out more and more of being able to trace roots, see connections, and build upon sharing where goth gets its many inspirations from outside of just England and Europe in general. And as he mentioned, Screamin Jay Hawkins, those of you that have been following me know that I have also done a video of Screamin Jay Hawkins, a part of my unsung black goth musicians, which, you know, it's supposed to be about black musicians in the goth field that don't really get the representation and spreading on social media as they can. I feel at this point maybe Screamin Jay Hawkins isn't a part of that, because I'm finding more and more people discussing him than I used to not. However, I already did that. He's a part of the whole series. It is what it is. If you want to, after checking this video, see that little section, you can look at that in the cards that I put up here and check out what I had to say about my research with him and my little points of articles that I've discussed with him and my little insight about him. Actions of the African diaspora and roots, and what goth has taken from that to build the community. It says examples of the Southern Gothic can be found in works by African Americans, including Toni Morrison's 1987 novel Beloved and Cassie Lemon's 1997 film Eve's Bayou. More recently, pop star Rihanna has embraced a goth meets street look. Not sound, but look, for those of you who are shaking your head, giving rise to the term ghetto goth, which I personally don't really ascribe to. If you're black and you want to, that's reclaiming a term that has been used negatively against us, so you can do that. If you're white and saying ghetto goth, that's extremely problematic. But I personally just want to say that it's goth and it's a black person dressing as goth. But if you want to reclaim ghetto goth, I'd say okay. And I have noticed some people within the African American communities using it as well. If you look for it, it's not hard to spot how blackness and goth style intersect. A self-described weirdo, I-26, doesn't identify as goth, but says, this community needs representation. She launched Adorned by Chi. Chi means God in the Igbo language in 2015 to give quirky black girls a place to shop. She says black women are too often portrayed as aggressive and dressed in provocative club wear in the media. She wants to see black girl representation across the spectrum. Be it cutesy, she likes poofy dresses and polka dots, or goth. Black people are put into boxes of how we're supposed to dress and what we're supposed to wear, she says. And that is completely true, and I love you so much, for doing this. You have changed the fashion and geek and also goth culture for those of us who are Black, and you're doing a big one for us. She also was the person who created the Adorned by Chi comics that I've mentioned in a previous video, which showcases a Black goth in the comic books as well, which are magic girl style, which is really awesome. They go in to interview other people who's a musician. They introduce a fashion designer outside of I that's more into the runway aesthetic instead of the commercial ready-to-wear side that I does with Black, with Adorned by Chi. Even get True herself, who was in the craft, to be interviewed for this section. And because the craft is really big in the community, even though I am a fake goth who has not seen the craft, kill me now, I guess. But even though I'm a fake goth who hasn't seen the craft, I know its importance in the community, as well as people who are also just dark inclined, as having a Black girl with representation. So I want to take a little bit to actually read all of what True says, since she has played a big part in representation in the community. So they say, True, who starred as Rachelle in the 1996 cult film The Craft, about a teenage coven of witches. Rachelle is the movie's only Black character and uses her newfound powers to get back at a racist classmate who bullies her. While many Black girls who have attended predominantly white schools can relate to Rachelle's storyline, they also appreciate her aesthetic. True told Racked about the groundbreaking character she played. They love everything about the look, from the baby barrette to the chokers to the Catholic schoolgirl skirts, the actress says. When she's not in uniform, Rachelle is styled darkly with flowing black dresses and matching tights, chocolate lipstick, crucifix earrings, and layers of beaded jewelry. Other times, the character wears flowing cream and brown, giving off more of an earthy witch vibe than a goth aesthetic. Rachelle, she's an alternate chick, True says. There just weren't that many when I first started acting in Hollywood in the 1990s. There were a lot of Boys in the Hood movies and a lot of white teen movies. But the two didn't really cross. Unless you saw Denise Huxtable on TV, you didn't see any Black alternate chicks. It's a style to which True, 50, feels a personal connection. She grew up in New York, sporting what she calls a pseudo-goth or boho goth look with an actor's disposition. It was like, I am in Black because I'm mourning for my life, she says, quoting Anton Chekhov's 1895 play The Seagull. That's kind of where the dark aesthetic came from. I was already into tarot cards since I was a kid. I would have never called myself a pagan, but I definitely had a goth moment. There was a limit, though. She loved The Cure, but would have never painted her face white to look like frontman Robert Smith, she says. Today, True is still acting. She recently appeared on BET's Being Mary Jane with Gabrielle Union and Michael Early, and she's made headlines since last year for doing tarot readings at the House of Intuition in Los Angeles. She's thrilled when little goths, especially little Black goths, approach her to say the Rachelle character resonated with them. But, she says, 21 years after the craft's debut, there's still a dearth of unconventional Black women in popular culture. She considers Rihanna and FKA Twigs alternative chicks for embracing a unique sense of style, but says most people would be hard-pressed to name more examples, which is why Rachelle continues to be a fan favorite decades later. I love that there's a clothing line specifically targeting brown goths, POC goths, or alternative chicks. For a long time, they've been a part of a marginalized group and a marginalized in that group. And I think that's so true, and why social media has been important, because still to this day we don't have in the more mainstream traditional medias a signal or a person to look to that is the goth black person to look up to idolize, and to kind of follow or to resonate with. We're finding it within ourselves through sharing and writing these stories like that, and it's so important to continue to do so, because if they're not going to do it and it's been decades later, we have to do it for ourselves, right? Go on to interview a few more people. I don't want to give every story because it takes away from reading the full article yourself. And we end the whole article by saying, we grow up with a little more scrutiny, not even feeling accepted, she says. But all of this, the music, the plugs, and piercings, come from our culture. More than outward appearance, Zuni says the goth sensibility is an attitude that reflects the darkness within oneself. Her advice to would-be black goths? Be the little weird you that you want to be, she says. You have to live with yourself. You can't allow other people to dictate what you can or cannot be as a black person. And I think that's so important for everyone to remember, because we still see on Facebook, we still see on YouTube people making these posts and articles saying that because we are black, we can't be in here, that it's only for white people, that we're confused, that we're misunderstanding things, or that we just don't fit in. And those of us that have been facing racism our whole lives and anti-blackness, because not just white people say it, and when it's another person of color being anti-black, they don't have systematic racism, and they don't have a place of systemic power in the United States specifically. So because they don't have the power part, it's not racism, but it's still anti-black. So we use that term instead. With all of that going on still, it's so important to hear these stories, to see all these different people and their walks of life and their contributions to it, so we can continue to feed ourselves, to feed our security, our belonging, and our sense of we're going to do it no matter how much opposition comes our way. I think that's really great about the article. Did you enjoy it? Do you want to read it all, or you've already read it? Put in the comment section below parts that were really interesting to you. Until next time, this is me, Justin King, and I'll talk to you guys later. Bye, YouTube land.